And welcome to our insider look at Trilogy. So for those of you who got on a little early, I'm glad and appreciate you doing that. And what you were seeing, either all or some of part of our Trilogy docu-series. About 2 years ago, we actually hired a full-time filmmaker to just kind of immerse himself in our communities and find stories. And we gave him the freedom to tell those stories. So he's got quite a bit of editorial liberty. You can see our gentleman Dan, who lives in Florida. He did, I think, a great story, and that's what 75 looks like. I'm pretty freaking jazzed about getting to 75. That was awesome. Anyhow, everyone, welcome here. My name is Ben Kaiholtz, and I'm here today as your host of what I hope is going to be one of our more meaningful webinar sessions. It's because today we're going to spend a little bit of less time talking about the features, functions, benefits that are part of the home selection process at Trilogy, and talk more about the way the choice of moving to Trilogy ultimately makes people feel. We're going to hear stories from three members who I'll introduce here in a second, and we think their journeys represent the journeys of most likely many others, right? They've taken different paths. They've had hesitation and angst and kind of all the feelings that go along with not just changing your house, but changing locations and the type of community you want to call home. It's a leap for everyone, right? And so I think that the stories of Kim and Kevin and Hillary will be informative to all of you who are taking this choice on where to live next really seriously. Before we get into their journeys, I'll take care of a little housekeeping. First again, my name is Ben. I've worked with Trilogy almost since Trilogy started in 1999. I joined in 2001. I've been blessed to see how our communities have grown, how so many of our members' lives have flourished. I'm a true believer. Like, I see the power of what bringing the type of people who choose to live in Trilogy together creates. And I really do view it as a blessing. I've been so lucky. And so, you know, if I start to drone on like I am right now, it's only because I care. So, and I think it's powerful. Look, I'll be joined by three members who serve as ambassadors in their respective communities. So on my screen, the bottom of my stack is the lovely Hillary. Hillary lives in Trilogy Summer in Las Vegas. She's a Londoner who moved across the pond 30 years ago, landed in LA, worked in the film industry, just recently moved to Southern California, or to Las Vegas from Southern California, along with her husband. We're going to talk to Hillary a bit more in a second, but among the many things she seems to have discovered is the key to a successful long-term marriage, which I believe you told me is time together and time apart. So well done on that one, Hillary. We'll get to Hillary in a second. We also have, next on my screen is Kim from Trilogy Orlando. Hi, Kim. Kim's a New York transplant with a background in public education. Kicked the hell out of cancer. Congratulations, and happy to hear that. And maybe most importantly, used, you know, her health battle as a launching point to her journey to living her best life. And we're going to have her talk a little bit about that. And then finally, we have Kevin from Trilogy Tahale, which is in Northwest Washington. Got a horn blowing in my background. Hope everyone hears that. Kev's another New Yorker by birth, took the path, what I'll call of most research to get to Trilogy, tested out, I don't know, communities of all shapes and sizes across the country. Kev, you'll talk a little bit about that. He and his wife are some of our most active residents, and we'll talk about that a bit more in a few, because there's some fun things that I think Kevin can share. To give you all a sense, so Kevin's from Trilogy Tahale, that's right up here, just outside of Seattle, south of the kind of SeaTac area. Like I say, Hillary is joining us from Trilogy in Summerlin. It's one of the two communities we have in the Las Vegas area, Sunstone being the other. And then we have Kim joining us here, Trilogy Orlando, one of our 4 East Coast communities within Trilogy. Okay, so with that introduction made, I'm going to switch off. I'm going to stop my share and just get us so you can see everybody's faces a little more clearly. I'll share our format, which is basically an interview by me with questions from you all interspersed. So you have questions, all you need to do is use the Q&A function, which I believe is already pretty active. So you can use on the bottom of your Zoom browser, and my partner Katie, who you heard from earlier, traffic those questions up to the group. So if you have anything along the way, just toss those in and we'll get them in. Like I say, with that, you're probably tired of hearing me. Excited to hear from our panel. So here we go. So Kim, I'm gonna put you on the spot first.
Okay.
Can you take a little time to tell us about your path to Trilogy? And once you do that, what I'd love to make sure you share is what it's been for someone like you. You operate independently, proudly single. How did you find the process of moving in, and how long did it take for you to feel connected to others? And kind of what was it like, transitioning your community to really feel like home?
Oh, okay. So my journey started out in New York. I've always lived in New York, never lived anywhere else. But in 2017, I retired from public education as an administrator and was thinking about what the next step in my life would be. And I didn't have to think about it because I think there was a divine intervention. I was diagnosed with cancer, so that took almost a year out of my life. And during that time, even though it was a little scary, it was probably the best thing that happened to me. And I don't know if you're going to get many people that would say that, but it gave me an opportunity to reflect and to say to myself, I was given a second opportunity to live my life. And now I wanted to define what that opportunity would look like. I was divorced probably about 8 years. My son had started college and I was in this big house on Long Island and knew that that part of my life was now over. And so I had to redefine what life would look like for me as, a single person and retired. So I started researching while I was home going through treatments and stuff. I started researching different 55 and older communities, and one of them that came up was Trilogy. Knew nothing about Trilogy, but I started to read more and more about it, and I kind of liked what they had to say, particularly because it spoke about being an active adult community, and active is what I had hoped to get back to. So that was my first, okay, check, that might be something that I would be interested in. Long story short, I couldn't let it go. So I decided that I would, research it some more. And I found out that they were building a brand new Trilogy in North Carolina. And since I had relatives there, I thought, okay, that's a safe move because I have support there. So I myself moved to North Carolina, to Huntersville, North Carolina, which is north of Charlotte and 8 miles from the Trilogy in Lake Norman. But Lake Norman was so early in its birth, it was hard for me to get any idea of what community life would be like. And even though the salespeople there were wonderful, because I probably went up at least once a week to see how far they had gotten. And finally, the salesperson said to me, well, if you want to see what community active life is like, why don't you go and visit the one in Orlando? I never in my wildest dreams ever thought of living in Florida. Had been to Florida 99 million times, going to Disney. My son's godparents live in South Florida. So, I knew a lot about it, but it didn't appeal to me as to be the place that I wanted to finally settle in. But I took his advice and I went down. I did the stay and play for 2 nights. And I invited another friend of mine who was retired to meet me in Florida. And we came to Orlando, and I couldn't stop talking about the place. I couldn't figure it out, first of all, because everybody was so nice, so friendly. And I kind of thought, well, they must be drinking something. But I just couldn't, I just couldn't get over how friendly they were, activities, what was available to me. But I still wasn't sure that I wanted to buy. My friend, on the other hand, who I asked to come visit, She bought immediately. I did not. I liked the fall season and the season. So I was still like, I'm not sure, even though I liked what I saw. So I went back to North Carolina, and it wasn't until 6 months later I said, you know what? I think I want to live in Florida. And I want to live there because I liked what I saw. I liked the lifestyle. I liked how active everyone was. And it brought me joy to think that that's someplace that I felt I could go as a single homeowner and be okay. And I can't tell you, I'm more than okay. I mean, this place is just wonderful. And moving as a single person, that didn't bother me much because I was downsizing and I was looking forward to it. But I knew here in Trilogy, I had a community as opposed to buying in a neighborhood. And I had experienced that already. But being here, we were all in the same, we all had the same mindset. You know, we had finished our careers and we were here to have a good time. Can't hear you.
Unmute.
Sorry, there we go. Kim, I really appreciate you sharing that story. And you know, we've done a couple I think folks on the line will know that we've done a couple of these in advance. And I think Hillary, you know, when I hear Kim's story of kind of, you know, it just felt right. You came to Las Vegas, and I don't think you and your husband didn't really have a connection to Las Vegas. And you also,
my husband did.
Your husband did. Okay.
Did, yes.
So can you talk through kind of, first of all, introduce yourself a little bit, and then do you relate to kind of what Kim was sharing, or can you kind of, you know, riff on that a little bit too?
Yeah, well, I started my life off in Manchester in the north of England. After art school in the 60s, which was a wonderful time, I went to live in London, and I had a very successful career in London. I then met my husband in Europe, who was living in Los Angeles. I was 22 years in London. And he suddenly said, how do you fancy LA? And I thought, why not? So then I went to LA, carried on with my career, had a really good career, very busy career in Los Angeles. And then after 30 years, it was about time, well, 50 years almost, it was time to retire. So we thought about where we wanted to retire. And my husband's always liked Vegas, and I really only knew the Strip in Vegas. I knew nothing about Las Vegas at all. So we started looking online, and I discovered Trilogy online and the virtual tour. And I just fell in love with the architecture, with the materials, with the whole feel of Trilogy in Summerlin, because I think it's pretty unique for Shea, Trilogy in Summerlin. It's a unique look. So it is. My husband came on his own. I was still at work, and he kept sending me emails, and he fell in love with the 3 stories. So the bottom 2 floors are one unit. The top floor is a separate unit. We have our own entrance, an elevator, and that sold it. For him, it was like the perfect place. He loves being in LA, sorry, we lived at the top floor of a condo building. He loves top floors. We've got a wonderful view. It's light, it's bright. It's not too large for us. It was just perfect. So I hadn't seen it till it was built. It was sort of a little bit scary. So when it was ready, came out with another friend so that my husband and I didn't argue or anything. We had another friend as a and then I saw this and I thought, wow, this is absolutely wonderful. Then we went back to LA, and then we moved here, and I didn't know a soul. I had no friends here, nothing. Immediately started going to classes, have met the most fabulous people, never felt lonely, never regretted it, don't miss work anymore. Just feel this is the next stage in my life. And just perfect. Love the weather here, which a lot of people don't. I love it. We love the heat. We love the pool in the summer, even the winter months when the sun's shining. It's just gorgeous. Don't regret it for a moment.
Oh, Hillary, I'm so happy to hear that. And it is, I mean, you are, I'm trying to imagine a scenario where I kind of just like, oh, hey, honey, I bought a new place in a new city. You haven't seen it yet. And, I look forward to you helping me move. I'm not sure how well that would play. So that's a really neat, and I'm glad it's, worked out. We'll get more into how that's worked out for you. And I think, Kevin, actually the end of your story is not totally dissimilar, right? Because I think you ultimately kind of were able to convince, in absence, your wife to come along too. But your journey, which I want you to go through, because you really did this interesting kind of, for lack of a better term, analysis, right, of all these options and types and things. So do you mind doing a little introduction of yourself and then talk about your process, Kev?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Kevin, and I am also from New York and Long Island. Grew up there in a town called West Islip in Suffolk County by the beaches, and wanted to get out of New York because commuting an hour and 45 minutes each way was not what I was really wanting to do. And so I moved to Washington, D.C., ended up meeting my wife, and then we subsequently moved to Denver, Massachusetts, Atlanta, Kansas City. And we were in Kansas City, and she had some health issues, and we both decided it was time to retire early because you only live once and you never know how long that's going to be. So we retired early, and we decided to move to Washington because both our kids lived there. It wasn't where we wanted to go necessarily. Actually, Colorado was where we wanted to go back to. So we head out there, and the last place in the world I wanted to live, or my wife Ginger wanted to live, was in a 55 plus retirement community. No way did I ever want to live in a place like that. So we looked around. I had a spreadsheet with over 50 communities around the country, and I never met a spreadsheet I didn't like. I mean, I rated everything and scored it, and for me, that's fun. And so we finally got to Washington, and we decided we're going to move to outside of Seattle in one of the northern or eastern suburbs, and it's going to be great. Well, as it turns out, coming from Kansas, it's not easy to buy a house in the Seattle suburbs. Prices didn't quite match up so well. And so I said, Jen, I saw something online, something Trilogy in Bonnie Lake. Let's go and look. And she said, no way. I don't want to go down there. I don't want to live in a 55 plus. I don't want to go south of the airport. There's no way I want to go there. And I said, well, we have to at least look. How bad could it be? And so we get in the car and we're driving and we're driving. The first time you go anywhere, it seems like it takes forever. It's really not that far away, but it seemed like it. And she was complaining the entire way. And so we get there and we turn in, and all of a sudden there's Mount Rainier, this beautiful, majestic mountain. And then the trees and the alleyway as you come through. She said, oh, this doesn't look so bad. We pull in, we walk into the models. She turns around and says, okay, we can live here. I mean, it was like an instant turn. I didn't even try to convince her because it was just instant. And the community was just beautiful. It was exactly what we didn't want. But as it turns out, we didn't know what we needed and what we wanted. We wanted something that if you've never been retired, you think you want. Oh, I want to live in a college town. I want to live about a half mile from the town and we can walk there. And I want the shopping and I want a big city nearby. No, what we want is a community of people who are interested in being active and doing fun things and playing pickleball and walking and hiking and running and going to parties and making friends and traveling around the world together. That's what we wanted, but we didn't know it.
Yeah.
And that's what we have here in Trilogy.
That's really interesting, Kevin. And thank you for sharing, by the way. I think I'm always have a good time with the paths people take. There are a bunch of questions coming in, so I really appreciate everyone's participation. I'm gonna ask a question of the panel, and I'd love to have you go around, maybe in the same order we just went, starting with Kim and Hillary and Kevin, and maybe just if you could go back in time, compare. There's kind of three components, right? There's the actual home you choose to live in, right? Like the floor plans and that kind of stuff. There is the community that it's within, right? Like, do I want to be in to your point, Kevin, like a 55 plus or a traditional neighborhood or whatever? And then there's, the location, where in the country is it, et cetera. Like, can you all maybe just, or whoever feels most comfortable talking about like how those were prioritized when you were first shopping, and how maybe your perspective has changed now that you've lived in the community. Like, do you think at the time were you thinking more about the home and now more about the place? Or I don't know, I'm just curious. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but Kevin, you're nodding. Maybe you can talk a little bit and then go to the ladies.
Okay, yeah, that's a pretty straightforward answer for me. As an ambassador who takes people around and shows them the community, one line I always say, you can find a beautiful house anywhere you want to look. Trilogy has great houses, but that's not why you move here. You move here for the community, for the people, for the activities and the opportunities to, live your best life, as the phrase goes. For me, I'm a guy. Does it have a roof? The house was never really all that important to me. I just wanted to downsize from 3,600 square feet to, I don't know, 1,800 square feet or less. I just wanted a nice house that I'd be comfortable in. We wanted to be in Washington because we have kids here and we have a new granddaughter. And so it's nice to be nearby and have that close. But Trilogy, because of the 30 plus miles of trails, eventually we're going to have like 100 miles of trails. The green, the mountains, the activities, that for me is what was most important and what really pushed me to want to move to Trilogy. Ginger really loved the house.
Yeah.
And that's great because she's happy with the house. I don't care. I wanted the activities and the community and being in Washington.
Well, Hillary, you were a designer. I don't know if you're like always a designer once you're a designer, but this is something you did, and so you care about aesthetics. And you said that the actual home you're in is important. Well, I don't know, how much time do you spend in your home, and how much time do you spend by the pool, and how much do you spend outside?
Very little time at home. It's interesting because I had a Victorian house in England, in London, in Chelsea, which was 4 floors. And I decorated, I went crazy. Every time I did a big job, whatever money I had, I'd redo another room. And in fact, I lived 10 years in the house and I redecorated twice. Was photographed for quite a few magazines and catalogs, etc. Then when we moved to LA and we bought our condo, it was a brand new condo, decorated again. Now I've moved to Trilogy. It's interesting because, as you can see behind me, it's just white. It's like an empty canvas. It's just very modern. Brought our furniture from LA. It doesn't really go in the place. It needs much more modern furniture, but I don't really care anymore. I just love my life here. I love my classes. It just doesn't seem important to spend money now. I don't know. I'm just happy with my life, my lifestyle here. The home is comfortable. We love it, but I don't need to do that anymore. And remember, I was a set designer, so I built and designed room settings. I'm over it. I'm retired. I think I just want to be active and feel healthy and enjoy my life here, which I do.
Oh, it's such a great answer, Hillary. By the way, well, if you come out of retirement, I have plenty of work for you. We got lots of rooms, lots of places. So Kim, I know you spend time outside the home, but you've also become a bit of a host there, maybe surprisingly. Can you talk about kind of the way that you really ended up breaking through in your community? So maybe that's the perfect verb, but can you talk through your experience with Galentine's and just kind of how you've come to be a host or a kind of a pillar in the community?
Sure. That was what was important to me, was the community more so than the house, even though I do love that house that I picked. And actually, when I came down to sign for the house, I was signing for one particular house, and a new series of homes opened up. And my sales rep said to me, "While we're waiting for the paperwork to come from Arizona, you want to ride with me up to see the new house models?" And I said, "Sure." And when I got up there and we looked at the 3 models, the third one, I turned and I said to her, "Can I change my mind?" Because I found the house, I just found the house that clicked with me. But you're right, it's more about the community and the people. And yes, I came as a single person, but I enjoy talking to people. I've always done that. So people I've always been interested in people and where they come from and their background. And Kevin, I had no idea that you were on Long Island. But finding out things about people has always been, one of the things that I enjoy. So, I talk a lot. So, I'll ask people questions and then you find out, oh, well, this neighbor here is single or, and then you might say, okay, well then, let's go to a certain activity together or whatever. And even your married neighbors, I mean, like Hillary said, couples don't spend 24 hours together. So, I'll have some of my married friends say, can I just come to your house? I need a break. And I'm like, I got a drink and we'll go on the lanai. And, that's how it started. But one of the things that I did come to do the first year I was here, I moved here in November of 2017 and it was January. And on the news, they were talking about, it was February. And on the news, they were talking about this thing called Galentine's Day. And I was like, what is that? And I'm thinking it's something that just happens in Florida because I never heard of it before. But it seems like it's a quote unquote national day. It's the day before Valentine's Day, and it's called Galentine's Day because it's a day for women to love themselves and others and to uplift them. So the first time I was here, I had made some friends. So I said, you know what, that's fun. I never did that before. So I invited maybe 12 women, 8 women, I can't remember, 10 women over to have lunch. And it was all finger food. And we just sat around, talked and laughed and found out more about each other. And at the end of it was like an hour and a half. It was really, really nice. The following year, someone came up to me and said, are you going to have that luncheon again? And I was like, what luncheon? And she said, at your house. And I said, yeah, I can have it. So that 14 turned into 28. And last year, I had 47 women in my home to celebrate Galentine's. We did not do it this year, but we celebrated Galentine's. And what we do is, I can't say it was invitation only, but we invited our neighbors to come, whether they were single or married. And it was really just to support one another and to let everyone know that, no matter where you are in your life journey, whether you're single by choice or because of a death or whatever, or you're married, it's really the women, we are the sisterhood of this community because we hold this community up. When someone is ill or someone has to go to the hospital, we're the first ones to knock on the door and bring a dish or take, someone to pick up their medicine or whatever. So it's really, the sisterhood of Trilogy that makes things, I don't want to say makes things work, but supports what's going on here. And so now the group is getting bigger. And because of COVID this year, we didn't have a celebration, but what we decided to do was a community service project. And we didn't realize, and this was very eye-opening for me, that you see all people in your community who are very active and everything, but we didn't see people that were affected by the pandemic, who were not coming out, who were not socializing, whether it was gathering in the street at 5 o'clock on Sundays to say hello or whatever. And those were the people that we kind of started to think about. And it was like, well, where are they? Have you seen so-and-so? So what we did was we coordinated a list and we made these little, like, I want to call them love packages, but really it was all just candy with a little note that says Trilogy cares and we're here for you. And we made 114 deliveries to 120 residents in the community who were homebound for one reason or another, or families, couples who were taking care of their elderly parent who was now living with them. And that was probably one of the most unbelievable experiences that I've had in a long time.
Oh,
Lovely.
it's
It's really nice. Oh.
So, all right. So, panelists, I'm going to come back to you in just a couple minutes. to, and maybe I would like to talk about maybe the experiences that you've been having. I don't want to have a whole COVID thing like that's been, but I do want to talk about, kind of how you feel the experience has been in the living in a community like the one you're in versus what it may have been like, on a cul-de-sac or whatever, in a kind of a traditional neighborhood. Like, have you been able to stay more connected than you feel like maybe some of your friends that don't live in a community like this would do? So I'd love to have a couple of you comment on that while you're thinking on that question, and while I'm collecting myself after Kim's story, because I told you guys I'm a true believer. So thank you for sharing that again, Kim. It's so heartwarming. I do want to hit a few questions from our audience. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do kind of rapid fire style while they're doing that. So I would like at some point in this conversation, maybe Kevin, although I don't know, say Kevin, but Kevin, you're the analyst. Someone did ask a question about if they ever had any quality issues, how Shay has been to respond to those. So a little bit later, I'll give you an opportunity to maybe share any perspective you have there. We got a question about Lake Norman and how long it's been in development. Lake Norman, I believe, and you were there actually early, Kim, was right around 2015, maybe would have been right there, 2015, 2016-ish.
Yes.
I think it's about right for that. And I think we're about 600 or 700 homes in at Trilogy Lake Norman right now for the question. So we have a question from Washington State, which is actually probably a question we'll get from a few places, which is like, how do you know how much stuff is really going on? I would encourage anybody who's on the call, and I'm going to share my screen quickly again. While I'm doing that, let me click share here. Anyone who's on this call, I would encourage you to go to mytrilogylife.com. And oops, just let me pull this here. If you go to mytrilogylife.com, you can request guest access into what we call mytrilogylife.com. And you can see immediately, so you can select the community you're interested in. So let's say I'm interested in Kim's Trilogy Orlando, and I can let them know if I visited or not. And immediately you are given access to their members only website. So then you can log in, and I'm going to go to Trilogy Orlando, and you could see all the things that are happening in that community. So you can see events and any of the virtual broadcasts we're doing, bulletins, etc. So I would encourage anyone on the call who's interested in learning more about that to do that. I'm going to go to a couple more questions, and we're going to come back to the panel, as long as I can figure out how to toggle these screens, by the way. So how do I do this? Back to, okay, exit that. And I'm no longer sharing my screen, correct? Okay, and then where did my question and answer go? I'm gonna do one more. Okay, then we got one more question. I'm gonna come back to the panelists. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one. I'm gonna enter you guys on another question. So there was a question about floor plan variability. We got a million options. I mean, it's not a custom home, but I mean, there are, right? Like every community's got 10, 12 plus models and elevations and left, rights and options. So yeah, I mean, you're not going to build a pyramid or anything, but yeah, you've got lots of options for someone asked about options. Okay. I want to ask the question or follow up on the question, which I asked before, which is what it's like, as far as, with the world kind of recognizing isolation as an issue, what's it been like in our community? And that'll actually piggyback, because there's a question in here, which is, does it ever bother you having people living so close? So can you talk about, Kevin, I'll start with you on this one. First of all, how COVID's felt. And secondly, are there downsides to having so many neighbors?
Yeah, COVID right in the beginning, it was a bit of a challenge. Nobody really knew what to do or how things were going. I think things turned around a little bit when we discovered the 5 o'clock wave. Kim mentioned something about 5 o'clock on Sundays. Well, we did the 5 o'clock wave every day. And so from about 2 months of really only seeing my wife, unless you went for a walk and you were wearing masks and things like that, it went to the point where every day you could go outside and stand 6 to 12 feet away from your closest neighbors. And it really changed the whole dynamic, because at that time the lodge was closed. Really nothing other than walking, running, hiking on your own was really going on. So that was really critical for us. And then it continued through the winter even. With regard to living close to each other, I know there are a lot of people out there who say, oh, what about privacy? I want a 3-acre lot. I've never been that kind of person. I am thrilled to be in an interior lot, not a green space lot, having neighbors around me because I feel connected. I feel as if we are closer together and we can help each other in ways that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do if you had that big giant lot. They have the nice house. My wife has a big backyard with the garden. We have plenty of outdoor space that we can walk out to. I am the type of person who enjoys the closeness of the community.
Kim or Hillary, I mean, does that resonate with you?
Absolutely. I tell you, if it proves it was during COVID, it just proved if you were compatible with who you've been living with for the last 30 odd years. We got on so well. I couldn't believe it. It was fantastic because we're not the sort of couple that are together very much. My husband goes out in the day, and when in LA, I was working all day. We did everything together. It was fantastic. The people here were wonderful. We organized walks in the mornings. Then our classes came back out in the open air on the patio. We had to wear our masks, which was fine. It was difficult at first, but then wasn't a problem. They kept us occupied, not to full capacity, but they kept us occupied the whole time during COVID. But Kim, I just want to say one thing. My husband and I, we were very sick in January. The doctor wouldn't admit it, but we both think we might have had COVID. January the 11th. We'd only been here 2 months. We didn't know our neighbors or anybody. It was torture we didn't eat for like about a week. We couldn't eat anything. After a few months, I told people how sick we were, and everybody said, why didn't you say something? We would have shopped for you. We would have brought you this. So now, if I was sick, either of us are sick again, you always feel you can talk to your neighbor and ask them for something and not feel that you're imposing on them. That's the whole point. It's so friendly and lovely here. I'm sure your communities are the same. I mean, they're absolutely delightful.
Yeah, Kim, I would love to have you speak to that because I think, Orlando, your community is actually the largest of the 3 that are on the call today. So you have almost 1,000 homes. So if, so if someone could speak to kind of the combination of, obviously you've been great at making friends, but also there's a lot of people around. So I'd love to have you talk about that. And then I would also like to recognize that your chair, and I believe your wife's art behind you, Kevin,
Yes.
they are winning the chat room. So everyone loves your chair and everyone loves your art, Kevin. So
Ginger painted that as soon as we arrived. It's a tapestry of the Mount Rainier and it blowing up and then the meadows and the flowers. It's quite interesting.
Oh, it's so great. You're up against a set designer too, and you guys are winning right now. This is like it's an underdog story. All right, sorry, Kim, go ahead.
No, the chair came from Wayfair, so just in case. But you were asking about the community and
Well, I was just saying, because someone did ask about, and I think there's a real balance. People say, hey, look, it is really great to have the support network, right? But there's always 2 sides of the coin. And are there a lot of people around? And do you find that as like an issue generally? And then I would just think you'd be good to answer that because, Orlando's a pretty large community, relatively speaking, right?
Right. There are so many people around, and I think that's why I don't ever feel lonely because, for example, the month of March, so many of my neighbors, last week, 5 people that I am friendly with and neighbors in the community had birthdays. I am so over birthdays for the month of March, because everybody celebrates in one way or the other. But, I'm not that tech savvy when it comes to TVs. So whenever I have a problem with a TV, I'll ask my neighbors, and one of them used to work at Best Buy. So he's like, I'll be right over. So that works, that works for me. But we also have in our community, it's called Trilogy. I forget the name of it. But if any resident within the community has an issue or something that they need help with, they click on that link and they post, like, I might need help, like putting a cabinet together. And then we have volunteers, 2 people go to that person's home and will help put the cabinet together or change a light. And it's not just single people, it's older people who no longer can get up on a ladder. So that particular club works really well. It's not really a club, but you can sign up to be a member. So that really, helps. If someone needs a ride to the supermarket, because our supermarket, the nearest one, is almost 9 miles away, then, we'll take them. When you go in, you'll say, I'm going tomorrow. If you'd like to take a ride, come on.
It's not, I mean, it's just helpful. I mean, look, I think most people, when they say, hey, I had a great time at that party, what they really mean is I met somebody new that I didn't know before, right? That's usually we don't think about it in those terms, but it's really great to have this network of kind of people to reach out to. Hey, so actually, can we spend a little time, because I want to talk to about, you all are meeting people frequently that are considering the community, right? You host ambassador tours. You're a person that gets spoken with a lot of people who are, at some point of the investigation. And I'd love to give each of you the chance to maybe talk about some of the questions that you hear frequently, and maybe, what you've learned from hearing those, or maybe what the people who have asked those have learned in the process. So Hillary, maybe I'll start with you. What questions do you hear most frequently that aren't related specific to Summerlin, but just, around the general idea of moving in there, and how do you answer those questions?
Well, I think a lot of people, the first thing is they're worried about retiring, and are they going to be occupied?
Yeah.
Men like to play golf. We don't have a golf course here on the property, but I think we're associated with maybe 6 or 7 golf, or maybe more golf courses in our area. I think that sometimes the women are worried that, they're going to miss their backyard. Are they going to have enough space with their grandchildren want to come? I mean, there's all sorts of different questions. And I think couples, it's very interesting, either the woman's the dominant one or the man is. You find that either the man's asking all the questions or the woman's asking all the questions. The dynamics of relationships. It's very interesting. And, I just really tell people my story and how I came from LA, from a busy job. I've retired. I keep myself busy here. I enjoy my life here. And I think just, what other questions do people ask? Pets. So that's the biggest question. Can you have a pet? Yes. And we've got a dog park. It's fine.
To clarify our position on pets, we love pets. So I wish we love pets.
Yeah. Yes. And I think just what else do people ask? I'm just trying to think what other questions. I mean, basically it's downsizing. Yeah. I mean, people have to get used to not having their beautiful garden. I mean, a couple came in the other day and they had a huge property. And he said to me, I'm really worried about retiring. How am I going to keep busy? And I said, and in fact, Kevin, you said that men find it harder than women do. Because, we're a household. I'm happy poodling around the house. I can do washing, ironing if I'm bored. For men, it's harder, isn't it, to occupy themselves for a day. And it's a long day. I do classes in the morning, maybe 2 classes. I don't do more than 2 classes a day. So I finish around about 12 o'clock. It's still a long day to fill in your time.
Kevin, do you think that's, you and I have actually had a chat offline just about kind of, being a man and in these communities, and there's the social stigma around kind of making new friends, or anyway, like, can you talk a little bit about what Hillary said?
Oh, about men having a difficult time?
Well, I just think,
Post-retirement?
do you think did what she say resonate with you as far as what people ask about, and then, how you've experienced the community?
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, many of those similar questions we get. A lot of questions are specific to our community because we're a little different than most of the other communities. We're not in what you'd call a resort kind of a town. The biggest questions that we get are about the houses, and I keep trying to move them to the point. House is not that important. Think about everything that you're going to have here. I really focus on the amenities, on the activities, and all of that. And the women, more often than not, Hillary, are the ones in charge when they come to Washington, I have to tell you. Men are just following along and whatever. Downsizing is a big thing, but it's here in Washington, we had a lot of Washingtonians, and the values are really high. And so when they sell their house for $1.3 million, and they're looking to buy something in Trilogy, it's like, oh, I'm downsizing from 6,000 square feet, but I'm not sure 2,500 is big enough. So that's a big downsize, whereas, and so we're thinking, oh, what about 1,800? It's like, oh my gosh, I could never live in that size space. So there are a lot of those kinds of questions. And then you do get a lot of hiking questions because hiking is one of those big things that you do here in Washington. But the men thing is really important to me because I don't know, I'm not one of those men. I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah.
But a lot of guys are quiet. They don't make friends easily. They follow their wife along, and heaven forbid if they don't have a spouse, that makes it even harder for them.
Yeah.
It's a real challenge. Men, we tend to bond around doing something, playing pickleball, playing ping pong, something like that. When I go to cooking classes, I'm the only guy. When I go to other classes, when I played bunco, I'm the only guy. Guys just don't do a lot of those things, and they should, I think, get out of their comfort zone a little bit. But that's an issue that I've been thinking about for a while.
Well, hopefully there's a lot of guys on the call. They're all taking notes, like learn bunco, be open to.
You don't have to learn it.
We only have about 4 guys that come to classes.
No, I know. It's
women. And I was worried about my husband because he doesn't go to classes, but the pool was just every day he was swimming. It was fabulous. I was so happy for him. And he made friends at the pool. We call them our pool friends. Then there's the dog park. We haven't got a dog, but there's people who go to the dog park friends. I've got my exercise class friends. Then you have your Friday night jam friends. Each different sort of activity has a different group of friends. It's fascinating.
Kim, I see you shaking your head, and I know, just can you speak to that, or just kind of the diversity of the groups you spend time with?
Well, it's a little bit different here.
Okay.
And obviously I think it's because of the weather, but we have quite a few men that participate in our classes, particularly our athletic classes and stuff, and in the pool classes. And these people here dance night and day, 7 days a week. Line dancing, ballroom dancing, backward dancing. No, but they like to dance. So there's all different dance classes that do pull in males and females as couples. And even if you're not a couple, they invite you to come, and then they pair you up with someone. So for here, it sounds a little different in that regard because there's a lot of participation. You might see it in some of the craft classes if you're making wreaths or something, that's more a female kind of thing. But on general, for most part, even like the biking,
spin.
That, and also outside, what's it called? When you have the high-speed bikes and you go biking, I mean, there's got to be at least 50 folks that leave here every Friday at 8 o'clock in the morning to go biking. And it's so cool to see. I don't, even though I did get a bike during the pandemic, but I just ride in the community. But they
Be
ride
safe.
outside. Yeah.
No, yes, cycling. I think road cycles, right? Like, and
Okay.
that's we pretty much have a road cycle club at every community. That's probably a common one. I think hiking, culinary, these things are pretty common. What I'm going to do, team, because I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to do a little bit of Q&A cleanup over here. So I'm going to try to answer some questions while you're thinking about it. And I just love to have each of you give a little bit of a, if you were to give a parting remark, what that might be. So I'll give you a minute or two to kind of share anything you think is important that you didn't get the opportunity to share. While you're thinking about that, I've gotten so I've gotten a question: do people live here full time or half their time and half their time in another part of the country? Across the Trilogy portfolio, it's probably 60-ish% are year round and 40-ish% are seasonal. But that is going to be, very widely from, say, Kim's community where she's in Orlando, and a lot of people may still head back to the Northeast, whereas Kevin's community up in the Northwest is maybe more of a year-round person because, they're more focused on being closer to the city. Hillary's probably has a little more seasonal, being in Las Vegas. So that's community to community, but usually there is a blend. There's a question of, let's see, has there been any problems with the 55 plus designation? Have any potential buyers objected for resale? Does this limit one's buyers? To be clear, not every community is 55 plus. Some communities are completely 55 plus. Some communities are partially, where we have enclaves that are 55 plus and enclaves that are not. Some are fully, have no requirement around age. As for what that means on resale, I can't speak to that, but I can tell you that the communities are a blend. So I would encourage you to research that on the websites with your community representatives. Is there reciprocal access across Trilogy communities? Yes, there is. So members just go to a website, they go to mytrilogylife.com/reciprocal access, and they just fill out a little thing that says, where you're coming from and where you're going, and you have that option. We also have what's called home swap, where our members can put their homes into a rental area within the members only website and offer to swap. So whether they do it in real time or say, hey, Kevin, I can use your home for a couple of weeks up there in the summer, and you can use my home in the winter in Arizona or whatever. So we facilitate that. There's a question about fenced-in yards for pets. Most of our communities, if not all of our communities, have a balance where there's definitely a fenced yard opportunity. Hillary's in one of our few communities that has like a stacked home. She's on the third level she described earlier. So, but in that community, maybe that model is not fenced in yard, but there are homes within even her community that have a fenced in yard opportunity. So those are basically available anywhere. I think I'm trying to get to, sorry, folks are coming in fast and furious. I'm doing my best. Are there any volcanoes? That's got to be for you, Kevin. I'm assuming that when you see the smoke, you're supposed to run.
Yeah, we live in the Pacific Northwest. There are several volcanoes around, but they haven't blown up for a while, so I'm not worried.
And Kim, you've got every other natural disaster except for volcanoes, but you've made it through okay so far.
So far. So far.
All right, if I missed any questions, folks in the audience, we've made a genuine effort, so appreciate you submitting them in. With that, we've got a few minutes left. So I'm going to start ladies first again. So maybe I'll go Kim, Hillary, Kevin. Anything you'd like to share with folks who are interested before we go?
I would just like to say that it is a life-changing decision to make to where your final stop is going to be. And when you're making that, there's so many things to consider. But the one thing that I personally just feel that people should remember is, like Kevin said, the house is an important part of the decision, but more so the community, because your community becomes your family in Trilogy. And that really should be like one of, the top contender on your list. What is the community? Does it meet all of my needs? And each community is different. And like I said, from Lake Norman to Orlando, I never thought I'd be living in Mickey's house, and I don't regret it at all. I have a season pass and I go when I can. Even during COVID, I went this fall. I went in December just to walk around. But again, it really has to do with, find a community that fits you, and you will find a house that you'll love.
Oh, thank you, Kim. Thank you. It's a really nice sentiment. Hillary?
Well, for me, it was retiring and being very energetic.
Mhm.
I'm not the sort of person that can sit for hours or watch TV all day long or anything. I had to really think about somewhere where I was going to be occupied, where, and the nice thing about here is we're all older, but we don't feel old. And I think that's the secret here. We're all vibrant, age, we don't even say how old are you. It doesn't matter. You just need to feel fit, energized, friends. I just love it here. I couldn't be happier.
That makes me really does, Hillary. I'm so happy to hear that.
Lovely.
Kevin, I'll let you finish it off, and then I'll just do a couple closing words.
Yeah, I mean, I have to reiterate with everything Kim and Hillary said. I mean, I've been asked many times giving on the tours, if you've been here almost 4 years, would you do it again? Absolutely. Absolutely. This was the best decision we ever made in our entire lives. We moved from a cul-de-sac to in the middle of a street with lots of neighbors. Hillary said it very well. Friends are what's most important. I have more friends now than I ever had in my entire life. I mean, I
And
was a more
me.
traditional guy back in the old days. You went to work, you did your things. Me, you had a few friends, but now I can't even count how many friends I have, friends, acquaintances. Living in Trilogy has really changed my life for the better. I was always active physically and doing lots of interesting, fun things, but now I can do even more of it. I have a lot of time. I'm not stressed. I mean, I'm chill. And that is all about living in Trilogy and being relaxed and having fun. And the Shea people are great. Just want to quickly, you said something,
Yeah.
a question earlier about any problems with the homes. No place you ever live is perfect. Occasionally there are some things that are wrong with the house, but they fix them.
Yeah.
You have a warranty period. They're all taken care of. Everybody is good about it. They're fixed and they're taken care of. And we've been living here 3.5 years now. We've never had a single significant problem whatsoever. 30 years from now, well, who wouldn't have a problem 30 years from now? And I'm going to still be here 30 years from now.
That's right, you are. Yeah.
Then can I just say something quickly about Las Vegas? Because it is a unique place here. When I told people we're moving to Vegas, everybody went, oh, Las Vegas, because everybody just thinks of it as the Strip. People haven't a clue that Summerlin is absolutely beautiful. It's beautifully kept residential. The whole area is gorgeous. And, if you want to go to the Strip and have a bit of excitement, you can. I mean, I can see, I'm sitting here now, I'm looking at the Strip way in the distance and the mountains and the hillside. And I mean, just that's, you should come and see Summerlin to know that it's just somewhere very special. And I love it.
Okay, we'll be sending the details for Hillary's house party after this call, so stay tuned, all of our participants.
I'll get Kim to come and entertain.
That's right.
No problem.
So I'm gonna pull this up just so we can kind of get everybody. So first of all, I want to thank everyone, thank our panelists. You all were very kind with your time, and we really do appreciate the effort you made to really be honest and share. And what we hope today is, we talk a lot about sharing versus selling in our communities. Like, we're here to share what the communities are about and what we believe is important. If we are your cup of tea, generally speaking, we really are your cup of tea. If this is something you're looking for, I think we do it really well. So if you're considering finding out if this is something that's right for you, I hope you take the leap to at least go through the next step, right? You've been on this webinar. Maybe you'll spend some time with the community a little more. Maybe you'll meet Hillary or Kim or Kevin or some of their peers in other communities, and decide if it's right for you. If it's right, I'm sure we will find a home that's right as well for you. So with that, if you want to learn more, you can go to mytrilogylife.com. I talked earlier about getting guest access. You get kind of a peek behind the curtain. We have a number of films that show both the places and the people on our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/trilogyhomes. shayhomes.com. You can book an appointment. I'm sure you all get a million emails from us. We're here when you're ready for us. I'll end by saying thank you. So thank you again, Hillary. Thank you again, Kim. Thank you again, Kevin. I really appreciate everyone's
Bye.
time. Thanks,
you.
everybody. Thanks, Katie.
Bye.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.